Okay, great. Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. A couple more people will probably transition over. But in the interest of time, we'll convene our December meeting of the Crownsville Advisory Committee. I'm your chair, Chris Trumbauer. Thanks for joining us. We've got, I think, a pretty exciting agenda today. We're going to talk about the master plan and a couple other things. So I want to let everyone know also that Asha is with us, and she will be sharing a much new and improved equity statement and commitments. So what we're going to do first, as we usually do, is get our project manager update from Mike Stroud. Then we'll take the equity statement conversation, and then we'll get into the master plan comments. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mike, to tell us what's new.
Thanks, Chris. I have a few brief updates, and I'll start with current activities on site. The cemetery memorial, we are nearing completion on the site work. We have the pavers installed. We have the final grading, seed and sod done. So we're looking for the manufacturer of the granite, and that should be, we're working with the granite manufacturer. That should be happening in the next couple weeks, and we'll be looking at a delivery date sometime in the spring. The nonprofit center at 41 Community Place, those renovations are ongoing. Facilities is looking to have that complete by the beginning of next year. We have some initial interpretive signage going on at the site. We've been working with the planning and zoning cultural resources section to put that signage together. So we're working with them and Rec and Parks to find a location. It's kind of prominent off of Crownsville Road near the entrance to Hope House. So we're working with them, hope to install that in the next couple of months. For the master plan, we had the draft master plan posted on the 10th, and then we had a 45-day comment period, which concluded on the 24th of November. Got a lot of comments, and we appreciate those coming in during that review period. We had a town hall for the draft master plan on the 30th at Baldwin Hall. Had about 100 attendees. That was a great event. We appreciate everyone showing up for that. We're working on an online tour. A lot of folks have asked us about accessing the property to have a look around, and we're not quite ready for that. So as kind of a interim idea, we thought we'd have an online tour for folks to go to the website and have a map, an interactive map, and kind of click on the different structures. So we're working on that. Hope to have that posted in another month or two. The final master plan, we'll talk about that. Design Collective, further on down the agenda, we're going to go over some of the comments, and at that time they'll also talk about the schedule for the final master plan.
Great. Well, thanks, Mike. And now that you're done your report, I wanted to let the committee know that you've been nominated for the Outstanding Public Service Award for the County Civic Engagement Awards. So that award ceremony will be December 9th on Monday. So a virtual round of applause for our fearless project manager, Mike. Thanks for everything that you do. All right, great. So now, if there are any questions on Mike's report. All right, seeing none, we'll turn to our to Asha, who is back with us and has been doing a lot of work with the ad hoc subcommittee, the equity subcommittee. And Asha, you're going to walk us through what you've got.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be back after a long time. It's nice to see you all. I do know that there was some discussion in my absence. You know that I was out for a few weeks, but the subcommittee was generally charged with developing an equity statement that's to be used as a framework for equitable decision-making as we move forward with this project. I'd like to, at this time, congratulate the subcommittee members for doing a really great job. They dealt with some really tough topics, had some difficult discussions, dealt with some sensitive subject matter, and really managed to come together and work on something that I think is very beautiful and impactful. So just to recap, we developed a template by consolidating the best aspects of some equity statements from organizations around the country. We picked elements that we liked and put them together. We primarily relied on the Washington Nature Conservancy. They had a really good framework for acknowledging a history of injustice and committing to measures that would be taken to move forward. In addition, the LEAD has a social equity checklist. And for those of you who don't know, LEAD stands for Leadership in Equity and Environmental Design. They have a bunch of standards. The people on this call know much more about LEAD than I do. But long story short, they have some tools that they use in making sure that their design process and their construction projects are equitable. And so we really liked the inclusion of a tool section in the statement. So I am going to actually share my screen if that's okay, Kalisha. Okay, so bear with me just one second. Okay, hang on, because, you know, the tech of it all. Hold on a second. All right. There we go. Can everyone see that? And is it big enough for you to see?
Maybe a little bigger if you can.
Okay.
I
How about that?
think that's a little better.
Perfect. So I believe in my absence, this group was presented with the acknowledgement section, sort of the introduction and acknowledgement section of the equity statement. Since I've been back, there are a couple of minor revisions that I've made, but the language and the thrust is primarily the same. So we start with an overview about Crownsville and equity, the history, and then we move into the acknowledgement of injustice and inequity. This section, which was presented to you, has primarily remained the same. It's basically a recitation of the history with respect to some of the negative things that happen to Black people on the site and to people with mental illness. Those were sort of the two foci of the acknowledgement section. So you see, it refers to the establishment of the hospital, who built it, the history of racial segregation, what happened to children there, the conditions there, the medical experimentation that took place there, the number of patients who were there and died there, leasing out patients to work on farms for pittance wages, and the effects of that, right? The role of the Black staff, the fact that it was segregated in terms of their ability to work and that there was employment discrimination there. And so we talk about that in terms of acknowledging the past. The commitment section is going to be new, I think, to you guys. I don't think you saw this previously. So we've focused on making sure that Crownsville will be welcoming and safe and healthy for everyone who uses it and visits it in the future. We also focus on we reflect on the racial history of the location, the history with respect to persons with mental illness, and the need to use those things as touchstones as we move forward with the project. So in terms of the commitments, the first commitment is to prioritize the history with respect to African Americans and persons with mental illness, so that we ensure that barriers to their full access and participation are addressed. The second is the utilization of an equity lens, and we actually have the equity lens document as a tool in making decisions regarding access, programming, services, and opportunities associated with the site, so that no groups are excluded, marginalized, or harmed by governmental action at the site. The equity lens tool, for your awareness, is an analysis that we do. Who's involved in the planning? Who's involved in the decision-making? Who will be benefited and who will be harmed by a proposal? What types of steps can we take to mitigate any harm? And we also look at evaluation as part of an equity lens. At the end of all of it, what data do we have and what do we know about how we did? Okay, so that's the second one, is the utilization of an equity lens. The third is identifying opportunities to enhance our collective understanding of racism, ableism, intolerance, inequity, and injustice, as well as the institutions that perpetuate them, so that we prevent replication of those structures at Crownsville Hospital and Memorial Park. Next is maintaining dedicated spaces at the park for an accurate narrative of the history of the site, which should never be forgotten, and the need for continued racial equity work in the county. So there is a vision for this being a locus of racial reconciliation in the county. Ensuring that former patients, employees, and their descendants are afforded opportunities for meaningful representation and participation on any boards, commissions, or entities authorized to manage the park's affairs and activities. And there are precedents, by the way, for doing this at other sites throughout the country. One of our board members, or I should say one of the subcommittee members, actually sits on such a board where there's a shared leadership structure. Our next commitment is to solicit organizations, staff, donors, board members, volunteers, partners, and service providers that reflect the diversity and breadth of the county's communities. Next, utilization of best practices to provide minority and disadvantaged business enterprises with opportunities to contract or otherwise provide vendor services for the redevelopment and continued operation of the park. Some of you know that the county has a PAVE program that they've unveiled recently that focuses on opportunities for access for minority and disadvantaged business enterprises. So we envision that there would be continued collaboration and utilization of the PAVE practices for this project as well. Clearly, in doing this project, the county is going to comply with the non-discrimination and non-harassment policy that prohibits discrimination. And finally, there's a commitment to making demographic and other relevant equity data available to the public regarding the park's tenants, contractors, vendors, employees, and programs. So that's the commitment section. And that was done actually by a work group. So we had 3 work groups. There was one that worked on the acknowledgements, one work group worked on the commitments, and then the third work group worked on the next section, which is equity assurance tools and strategies. And this is sort of modeled on that lead document, as I said before. So the following tools and strategies are intended to support the commitments. It's the how we do the things that we've committed to do in the previous section. The first is the equity scorecard and an equity lens checklist. And it's what I described previously, using the equity lens to analyze decision-making processes as we evaluate proposals throughout the life of the project. Next is community engagement platforms. One big part of the equity lens is community engagement. It's making sure that you have a wide net, that all the people who need to be at the table are represented, and that they're aware of what's going on in a meaningful way. And so the subcommittee recommends using social media platforms and public meetings to engage with communities, to facilitate dialogue, especially with groups that are underrepresented and less likely to participate. The next tool that's critical is evaluation and reporting. So again, this would be an equity scorecard, maybe annual reports, public reporting platforms that allow us to evaluate the equity goals that we've made with respect to the project and to evaluate whether we've met those goals. It's also a mechanism for communicating the results over time. The next tool is training and educational resources. The subcommittee feels that anyone who's going to be intimately involved in not just decision-making for the project, but the life of the project moving forward, whether that's employees, board members, that they should be trained about the history of the site, that they should know about what happened there, and that there should be a common understanding to support the work moving forward. And finally, data analysis and visualization tools. So these are tools that allow us to really disaggregate the data in a meaningful way so that we know how different communities are engaging with the site and at what level. So it's your participants, it's your employees, it's your contractors, all of it. They like to see that data available so that it can be analyzed and reported, as mentioned in the previous section, in whether it's equity scorecards, annual reports, or on public reporting platforms. But the quality of that data is very important. And that is, in sum and substance, the structure of the equity statement. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions that you have about this.
Thanks so much, Asha. Again, a lot of work. Please thank the committee on our behalf. And we got a couple minutes if folks have any feedback or questions for Asha.
Thank you.
Very comprehensive. I love the engagement tools, well, all of the tools that you provided. We based our equity on that LEED scorecard assessment. It's really useful for evaluating projects. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Will Asha and Cecily, maybe this is a question for both of you, but to what extent will the new equity work be included in the final master plan? Are we going to bake that in?
Yes, we have a place for it held in the master plan, and certainly in this next revision, it will be included.
Very good. Awesome. Last call for questions on the equity statement and commitments.
Thank you.
Questions.
Got a
Good job.
comment from Councilwoman Rodvian that she likes the additions and is very supportive. So, all right. Oh, Delegate Bagnall has her hand up digitally.
Thank you, and thank you for all of your work on this. And I'm not sure how to thread this needle, but I think I'm correct in that even if a future administration is looking to dismantle some of our diversity and equity work in Maryland, because this is an equity lens that's a referential document, we still can maintain that in our statement. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think it's a way of analyzing problems. It's a framework for decision making. It doesn't prescribe a particular outcome. It walks us through a process. What are the things that we consider when we make decisions? So I don't anticipate that it should come into conflict with the
I
intentions of
appreciate
the
that. I just
future.
want to make sure that
Yeah.
we're thinking about some potentialities.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Well, thanks again, Asha and your team. Thanks to the committee for being supportive of this. And I think it's very forward-looking and will be another thing out of in the overall master plan. And that is a great transition to the discussion now on the draft master plan, which is still in draft form. We're going to have, before we get into we're going to have each subcommittee give a little summary of their comments or their feedback, just very high level, bring any major issues to our attention or kind of the overall thoughts. But before we do that, we're going to ask Design Collective to give us a very brief kind of overall summary of the types of comments and the volume of comments that we got. So am I turning that over to you, Cecily and Mackenzie?
Mackenzie will take the lead on that. Yes.
Yes. And I think I can share screen. All right. Can you all see that okay? Yes. Okay. So we have 2 pages here that summarize the comments that we've received to the county in that 45-day review period since the 10th when we posted the draft master plan. A lot of these will be repetitive that we've already heard. There are some new ones on here. And on the 2 pages, you'll see them somewhat bolded if they were comments that came up repeatedly. So if they have, 1 asterisk, they were mentioned a few times, or 2 asterisks all the way up to these were comments we got 50 comments for. So starting at the top, overall, we heard a very strong recommendation to have the site be on the National Register of Historic Places. We also heard a strong concern that certain pieces of the property would be redeveloped in the future, or that they would influence commercialization nearby. Under trails and recreation, I will say the strongest comments that came through were to ensure that any trail connection that is a part of connecting Waterworks Park and Bacon Ridge is a natural surface trail. That there were a few additional comments for amenities such as a splash pad, a fountain. Surprisingly, quite a few requests for indoor-outdoor pools. There was also just a lot of support for things we already had in the plan, such as the tennis courts, the track and field, the paved pump track, and the playground, as well as some of the community spaces for events and garden areas. And then, as we've heard before, there is a continued desire for equestrian access. Next topic, probably no surprise, continued concern for traffic, which, we've had discussions and we'll have further information on that in the final draft. Next is landscape and environment. There were a few comments about refining our recommendations for planting and how we're mitigating invasive species. And then generally, how are we protecting the forest, wildlife habitats, and waterways that are on site. On the second page, focus around mental health and specifically the use within the buildings for mental health. And there was a request that the mental health services really relate back to the original use of the hospital and to make sure that those facilities are being prioritized alongside the park facilities. Under art and artwork, there were a few comments, several comments about making sure that the arts is comprehensive and not just sculpture, that it includes performing arts and participatory arts, both inside and outside, such as music, dance, theater, and other performances. And additionally, under the building programming, continued support for the museum. There was the next topic of housing. This was split. There were some comments that voiced support for affordable housing, transitional housing, senior housing, different types of housing that would support the need in the county. While on the other hand, there were very strong opposition comments that no type of housing should be on the property. And next, under equity, reiterating some of the things Asha just shared, is prioritizing Black descendants of the impacted community for future projects and commissions. And then in the last category, as we heard at the town hall, concern for cost and funding sources. So there are additional comments on here, and this definitely isn't meant to represent every single comment. These were just some of the ones that came through strongest.
Great. Thanks so much, Mackenzie. This is helpful to see them summarized. I know we got a ton. And did you say the total amount of comments? It's like 140 or so?
Yeah, they're over 100 comments.
Yeah, I think the day that it closed, I think I was told there was 138 comments, and we know a few more trickled in. So
Yeah.
We'll say approximately 140 individual comments were submitted. And some of those were very short, some of them were very voluminous, but they're all being sorted and cataloged, and will be influential in finalizing it. Before we move into subcommittee reports, do any committee members want to ask DCI any questions about that overall summary, or should we jump in?
Motion detected at the doorbell.
Oh, Joyce, someone's at your door, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't help that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Former Senator Gerald Winograd sent in a very comprehensive list of comments about the site. And I wanted to, and I was asked to highlight 3 of them for the committee, if I may.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. The first one is that we need to manage the stormwater. So runoff from a 25-year event, which obviously is going to be more common, will be contained on the site. So this is an opportunity for the county to use the site as an example of how stormwater can be controlled, and we keep the sediment from the runoff, and air pollution is collected by the rain out of the South River watershed. which the site all drains to. The second major comment that he made is that we have an opportunity now to perform invasive plant control during this development on site. And we would hope that the county develops a long-term plan with volunteers to keep the site healthy for wildlife and humans. We have many county volunteers, stewards, weed resistors, and when we join with companies on Project Clean Stream days to help clean up the site, invasive control is a very popular project in communities and very doable. And the final comment that he made, which many of us stewards think is very doable and apropos, is to support a conservation easement with the Scenic River Land Trust of all the natural areas. So the forest, the wetlands, and the meadows need to be protected from destruction of any development, or for instance, using a lot of non-porous pathways, which it would seem in this day and age we should be able to do porous pavement. And the thought is that nature is a universal healer. So many of us were very impressed by this extremely detailed note to the county that Mr. Wingrad provided. So
right. Well, so thank you, Joyce. Senator Weingrad, he copied me on his submission, and I did read through it. I was impressed as well, and I responded to Senator Weingrad. And Design Collective has that. I think there are some good points. We are looking at the possibility of doing some no net loss. Certainly, the stormwater will be top notch. And then, as I think most of us realize, there already is a conservation easement on the property that transferred. That was part of the whole
At the doorbell.
property. So that is a cornerstone of it, and you can see it outlined on the draft master plan. I think it's a map on page 37, if I recall correctly. So those are all very good comments, and I appreciate you highlighting them for the committee.
okay, thank you.
Definitely part of the mix. All right, so with that, I think we're ready to move in. As folks remember, I had asked each of our 4 subcommittees, standing subcommittees, to kind of reconvene, take a look at the master plan, and then submit comments if they felt it was needed, or just give us overall feedback. So I think we'll just kind of go down the list. I'll start with the Infrastructure Committee. Thor, if you're prepared to give us the general feel of your committee's thoughts.
Yeah, sure, Chris. Our committee, infrastructure, reviewed the master plan. We thought it was a great document. We did have some feedback, some items we wanted to see some clarification on particularly on the Bowie State University, how that kind of fit into and how that might impact the master plan. We'd like to see more brought in about sustainability into it, and opportunities for renewable energy, green infrastructure, and other items into the ultimate planning of this site. Traffic continues to be a major concern for us, and not sure that even though the plan does address traffic, does it do enough to address potential congestion on adjacent roads like 178, and even the traffic flow through the site and how that might be impacted by events held there, and whether there's enough to keep traffic flowing through the site. We'd like to see more in the master plan on the utilities, particularly water and sewer, and how they addressed. Like to see more on recommendations for site lighting, security, Wi-Fi, and other infrastructure improvements in the plan. And lastly, just some refinements in the site plan to better identify some different areas associated with the infrastructure on the site planning documents. So they're all generally refinements of things we'd like additional detail or additional emphasis on in the plan.
That's really great. Thank you, Thor. Any questions from anyone on infrastructure subcommittee? And just to confirm, Cecily, we have all the subcommittee's comments, and got them in kind of a special pile, right? Very good.
Yes.
Good, thank you. All right, so next, let's move to health and wellness if we can. And I think I saw Dr. Pam Brown. There she is on my screen.
Hi, everyone. Let me say for context that we had our meeting, I think it was a day after the election. And so there was a level of emotion and concern in the room before we even started talking about this. So that's the context I need to explain to all of you. But I think overall, the committee felt like it was a good group, a really great plan, and particularly responsive to the town halls. I would say that everybody felt like it was heavy on recreation and less heavy on health and wellness. And obviously we're going to say that because we're the health and wellness committee. But I think I saw in one of the town hall comments that notion that we really should be looking closely at mental health services, because that was how Crownsville was used, and it seems important to respect that in any way that we can. We talked about priorities for what's addressed first, and that feeling that, you know, let's go for the low-hanging fruit like community gardens and build up to the more adventurous stuff. We talked about the work as it begins. The committee felt like we should be concerned with the rehabbing and deprioritize the pulling down. The current tenants who were part of our committee said, well, yes, but what we really need is for you to help us now. So as you know, there have been many issues for the current tenants related to water, related to many other things. So they felt like they would like to be prioritized in all of this. I think there was some sense of, you know, how are we going to respect what happened there? How are we going to repair? There was some suggestions, and I think, Asher, your additions are excellent, because I think they answer most of the things that came up in the committee. But that sense that, you know, how are we going to make sure that African Americans are part of the planning, maybe some sort of a community land trust. So that was definite, but I think that's a lot of that is there in what Asher has added. At the very end, we talked about how on earth we're going to raise the funding for all of this, because obviously it's going to require an enormous amount of braided, what we like to call braided funding. And they asked whether there was going to be a committee specifically to look at funding.
We
So
were
that's
just hoping
what-
you would figure it all out for us, man.
Hey, you just give me the go ahead. I'll do the braiding. No, but seriously, will there be some sort of...
Yeah, so the funding and financing component of this will obviously be a long-term effort that will begin under this administration and continue on the next administration. So that's one of the things we're looking at going forward, is what that exactly will look like and what shape it will take. But that is a known need that we're investigating for sure.
I guess one last thing I do want to say, I have chaired many committees over many years, and I had some trepidation about this committee because it was massively diverse with lots of agendas. And what was so astonishing was how mature and professionally everyone handled all of the different agendas. I really was highly impressed with the level of the committee work and their capacity to really hear one another and talk frankly about issues that are so difficult for us to talk about. So I do want to get that on the record, that I really was proud to be part of those conversations. It really was remarkable.
Great. Well, thank you, Pam. Any comments on Health and Wellness Committee? All right, well done. We'll move on now to our Rec and Parks Committee. I know we have our subcommittee chair, World Traveler Scott Himes. We've also got our Director of Recreation and Parks, Jessica Lays, with us. So one of you guys will take it away, yes?
Lady Jessica, do you want to say something first?
No, just I think that the subcommittee and the department were extremely happy with the master plan, like not just the amenities and the diversity of amenities, but the way that the voices were heard. Our stakeholders, users, and committee felt like the the group did a really good job capturing all those different voices and producing a product that really represents those voices. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. I think everybody on our subcommittee was incredibly happy with how much was heard by the comments that came through our subcommittee, and also from the public, and how it was melded together in such a nice presented plan. We had a few small things. I wanted to say something about Dr. Brown's comments about the healthcare aspect of it. And I think one of the things we mentioned in our original comments was that buildings such as the Meyer building or some of the other buildings could be used to help bring in to rent to regional therapists. And, you know, there's all, I know many people who rent space throughout the county and office buildings just to see patients. And if you had a programming aspect, just let's say the Meyer building or something like that, where parts of the building could be used, it's a great opportunity there. I'm just going to keep harping on that until the end. But let's go through the comments. Basically, I'll make this as quick as possible. There is concern about the property's capacity. For instance, if you're going to have a track and field there, is it going to be for meets, where it's going to be hundreds of people or hundreds of cars showing up, or is it going to be just for practice? Those are some of the things we need to figure out in order to, as a project, what the capacity is, and it'll help guide obviously what the amenities are going to be. There's some ideas to the report doesn't list existing and planned amenities that could reduce the intensity, such as what's at South Shore Park, going to be at South Shore Park in the future, and or the local defense park. One of our committee members is really interested in finding out any photos or information on the railroad station. I figured I'd bring that up here since we have such a big group, but that is part of the history of this whole project. So if anybody puts their feelers out on that, that'd be great. I'm sure the history part of our group would help with that. If they would have that, that'd be great, just to share with one of our members. There's some concern about the South Shore alignment and how it's changed, and that should reflect, the report should reflect that current alignment. There is a couple of small things, but there, and this is some stuff that just can go straight to Cecily that I won't worry about too much, but it's the idea is to create some synergy between what we're doing here and then show what the relevance is to the Bacon Ridge trails and so maybe some more information on that part of it, maybe not being part of our plan, but just showing where it is and how it relates. And as far as the Southern Campus cottages, there's really something that we always thought was a good idea, was those campuses could be retrofitted in the future to use for overnight camping, for Boy Scouts. I know Boy Scouts were mentioned, but it was narrow. And there's also could be basketball camp, could be tennis camp, could be, nature camp. But there's something there that is a nice resource that we may not have other than Arlington Echo in our area. So that's something to think about. The workforce housing and all the housing issues, that's obviously something above our committee's pay grade, but that is something that we think would be great use for that. And there is a lot of other opportunities here. One of the things that came up is that we really believe that the history of this specific project should be artistically captured, is a good way of putting it. And through photograph and video, one of our committee members, Bob Agee, who's most of you probably know, he really is passionate about this, which is really funny because I had somebody from a local photography group asking, is there any way we can photograph this? So there is some free opportunities there. We have to decide whether that's okay to get some people on campus to photograph it, and then to share with us the photos for free. That is just something we believe. I know obviously history and all that will want that also, but it's just something that we felt was kind of important. But I think that there's a lot of other smaller details about small little things that we can put within the plan, and we'll just submit those, have Chris submit those to Cecily and the group.
Great. Well, thanks, Scott. And we have one more subcommittee report, but before we get to that, I just want to ask, I guess maybe Kalisha, if we can have all 4 of the subcommittee reports, if we can combine those together, and maybe we'll send them out to the full committee, just so that, I mean, I know there's all of the comments, but I'd like the committee as a whole to know what the subcommittee reports in particular produced. And with that, we'll go ahead and Jackie Alsop wasn't able to join today, and I think we were going to have Jansen Evelyn, but he's stuck in another meeting. So I think Morgan, are you our designated reporter for Cultural History Committee?
Yeah, hi, Chris. Yes, I am.
Fantastic.
Yes. So the Cultural History Subcommittee really supports the master plan. Unfortunately, we were unable to reconvene due to some extenuating circumstances, but Miss Jackie Alsop is heavily ingrained into the community, so she talks to everyone, and she let me know that there is great support for the plan as it integrates the preservation of Crownsville's legacy with the transformation to a space for education, reflection, and community engagement. Overall, the comments that we received, we view the plan as respectful and forward-thinking, and we like that it balances cultural preservation with the new opportunities for public use and remembrance. Our subcommittee also talked heavily about interpretive spaces like a museum or a heritage center, so we're glad to see that integrated into the plan. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thanks, Morgan, and thanks for stepping up at the last minute to give that summary. Okay, so I was hoping next that maybe DCI can give us a real quick understanding of kind of what happens next as they work to finalize the draft plan in the coming weeks. Cecily, can I ask you to do that?
Absolutely, yes. So just to let you all know that we have been getting comments as they come in. So we haven't been standing still in this process, which I think is good because there are a lot of great comments and some required further analysis and study. So we have been looking at incorporating some of the changes to the plan. We also have been advancing with the traffic analysis that was completed at the end of October 30th. Looking at some revisions based on the impact of that. So to all those who had the concerns about the traffic, we understand that. We are not charged with broadly looking at the full area, I will state that, but we are looking at the impacts of the uses on site, had provided RK&K with a full array of the use of the track, the use of the fields, the use of event space, and gave them all of that. They've been modeling that information, had their initial report, and we've been looking at some revisions to understand how we can best accommodate that on site. So you will see that in the next draft. We are also, fully engaged with looking at the trails. We know that's a big concern, and we did look at revising the South Shore Trail already. So that's been revised within the plan, and having a spur that comes into Crownsville. The Crownsville Collector Trail or Connector Trail is what we're calling that. So we have been responsive and starting to study a lot of these items that have come through, and we heard at the town hall as well as the comments have come in. So we're actively pursuing those. We are waiting for final direction from the county based on all of that, the 45-day period, and making sure that we know we have direction to revise the plan accordingly, and also based on all the committee comments as well. So our next steps are to keep revising the plan based on those comments. We are hoping to have a revised draft by the end of this year that the county will review internally, and then I guess it will be early Q1, let's say, of 2025 when that is posted to the website as the revised final draft master plan.
Very good. It's an ambitious timeline, and I think so far it's gone really well, and I've personally been impressed with for the size of the scope of the project, how we've been able to navigate this pretty much on target with our original timeline. So You know, we had been telling people we hope to get the final plan done by the end of the year. And if we have to slip that a week or two, I think it's more important to get the plan right and correct than it is to meet an arbitrary deadline. But if you have the, you know, the final draft done by the end of the year, I think that's a great goal. So thanks to you and the whole team, and also for outlining that next steps. All right, so the next two things we have on our agenda are committee member comments and questions, and then we'll open it up to public comments. So we've gone through a lot today, and this is the time when any committee members can make a public comment or ask a question if they'd like to, and then we'll get to the public. All right, seeing no movement on my screen or digital hands raised, we'll consider that to be a content committee, and we will now see if there are any of our attendees that have a comment or a question. And I see that Stephanie Franklin has her hand up, so maybe we can.
I guess very quickly, I just saw that Larry Walker raised his hand.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Mr. Walker, do you want to go ahead and address the committee?
Thank you, love.
Looks like you're on mute there. All right, well, we'll come back to Larry. He may have to unmute, but can we let Stephanie Franklin do her comment now?
I'm going to allow her to talk right now.
Great.
So, good afternoon. Thank you very much for allowing me to make this comment. And unfortunately, I had come into the meeting a little bit late because I was in a previous meeting and I missed Asha Smith's comments on the Equity Committee. I do want to say this for the record. I am Stephanie Franklin. I am President and CEO of the Franklin Law Group. I am a member of the Equity Subcommittee, and I am not in agreement, and I want to say that on the record, with the naming of the Black people who were harmed at Crownsville. I think it's very important to be specific about who was harmed at Crownsville, and we just are generally saying Black descendants, when in fact it wasn't just Black descendants. There are specific Black people who were harmed at Crownsville during that time, and those are Black people who descend from U.S. chattel slavery. I have been a very vocal member of this committee regarding the use of language and the importance of specificity. I do feel like this is ethnic erasure. And in commitment to my ancestors and the legacy of them, I am stating here very clearly that that is a problematic naming in the document to make it flat Blackness, to include all Black people, because we have a large population that is very ethnically diverse in the Black African American racial category. But the people who were harmed at Crownsville were American descendants of slavery, whether people like that language or not, or they were Black U.S. slavery, chattel slavery descendants. And so I want to say that very clearly on the record, because I know that, at least I caught a slither at the end, that I'm assuming that everybody feels that everybody is in agreement with this document. I am not. We do have up until the end of today to make final comments on the document as presented. The Equity Subcommittee is very well aware of my position on the document, as I have given numerous comments previously, but this last iteration that we just recently received, I'm just able to comment on it today. So I want to state that for the public record, because it's important for me to do that not only for myself, for my law firm, but for my ancestors who are U.S. descendants of chattel slavery, who are Black people who are U.S. descendants of chattel slavery, American descendants of slavery.
Well, thank you, Ms. Franklin, very much for those comments, and they are certainly on the record. And when Asha presented hers, she did specifically reference that there were a lot of diverse opinions on the committee, so it was not characterized as unanimous. But thank you again for your comments. They are recognized and part of the record. Do we want to try and go back to Larry Walker
It looks like he put his hand down, so maybe that was just an accident.
Okay, very good. And we don't have any other indications of comments from the public, so we will consider that closed. And so the final order of business is just to discuss our next meeting. At the previous meeting, I think we outlined our strategy that we're kind of taking a little bit of a breath. The master plan will be finalized and we're going to be moving into another phase. I do want to keep the committee active and engaged, but I think we're going to have to take a breath and think through exactly what the best way and most productive way for us to be engaged in. So my proposal at that time was that we would meet quarterly at that point. And if there became a time where we needed to meet more frequently, we could certainly do that. So that would put us in for a, Hannah, a March meeting. And we can look, Thursdays have generally been good. I know that for our colleagues in the General Assembly, you'll be in session. So we could look at potentially doing a Monday or something, but we will work on that internally and check with some of the key stakeholders and make sure we can schedule a meeting to get the best attendance. But that will likely be in mid-March. So keep your eye out for that. And Hannah, is there anything else we want to inform the committee on before I wish everyone a happy holiday season?
I think you've covered everything.
Great. Well, we just got done with Thanksgiving, and one of the things I was thankful for was the work of this committee. I think you guys have been great. Looking forward to continuing that work in the next year. And in the meantime, considering all the hard work everyone has done, I hope you can take a minute and enjoy the holiday season with family and friends. And we will keep you informed on the next steps of the master plan, and we will see you again as a formal committee meeting sometime in March, date and time to be announced shortly. So thanks again, everybody. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.